So how did you how did you get to know Meshorn?
So I'm listening to Terry Miners is the guy's name, and there's this guy calls in and gets black guy obviously gets to talking about men in the black community being responsible fathers and responsible employees and responsible to community. And I thought, who is this guy? I called him or sent him an email and said, I heard you on the radio and I would love to sit down and talk with you. And so we met at just a Taco Bell, I remember, out here. And you know, Meshorn, before too long in there, he probably had the people in there about ready to call security, because his voice, he got a little elevated. He wasn't mad or anything. He was just Meshorn. He was just enthusiastic, and his voice got a little louder than it might normally be. And I'm looking around thinking, you know, we're just in a South End, typically middle-class white neighborhood. Meshorn's the only black guy in there. And I'm thinking, these people, I don't know, you know, they're probably wondering if he's about to reach over and thump me upside the head or anything. But I thought, he's harmless. He's not going to do anything. He's just fired up. For a handful of years, our involvement was through the local organization Man Up. Meshorn provided leadership for years. I have a large group of, you know, I don't know, 8 or 10 acquaintances, you know, colleagues, so to speak, through Man Up that I still am in touch with on occasion. We look at life and look at circumstances in many ways quite similar, but we look at life and circumstances in many ways quite different. If we're just talking and you've got an idea about how to build a mousetrap, and I've got an idea about how to build a mousetrap, but they're different, and we share our ideas, then both of us now have two ideas about how to build a mousetrap. The perspective being is that I'm not threatened by or intimidated or troubled by what Meshorn might tell me. Different than I would take those differences and say, well, Meshorn's got a good idea here, and I need to accept that, embrace it, and Meshorn's got a not so good, a bad idea here, and I just need to simply discard it. But it's not a, you know, that bad idea doesn't determine what I think of him. We're still just developing our friendship, allowing each other to be who we are, to think what we think, to have their opinions, whether they're different or whether they're radical or whether they're whatever there may be, and we come away. We both still, in my opinion, come away with each of us being okay to the other.
So what did you when he told you that he was going to write a book?
I said, Meshorn, you realize that this is it's a whole lot harder than just turning on your computer and bringing up your Word document and typing away. It's work. It's a hard task to do to begin with. So, but I said, if that's something that you are going to do and you're committed to it, go for it. Do it.
Right.
That was 2 or 3 years ago, I bet, that we had that conversation. So, So
then,
son of a gun, he did it.
So you mean then you heard about? I mean, you didn't know he was working on it after that conversation.
I probably did on some of our conversations, knew that he was working on it, but I have known. Once again, I have had some not any great, but there's always people that are working on a book, and it just so sort of sits there. I have my perspective on writing a book is I've had grand, in my opinion, grand ideas about writing 2 or 3 books, and have sort of thought through the conceptual parts of it, and then said, well, I'll then get to begin talking about the work and effort, and I said, nah, I don't think I want to write a book that bad.
Right. Yeah, it takes a lot of focus, yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
Good word, a lot of focus.
When you started listening to it, how did you feel when you first started listening to it?
Then the first part of the book that talked about his growing up and his life, I will say before the Army, I came away from that with two things. Basically, 2 things. I said, oh my gosh, Meshorn had and I've told him this, Meshorn had a horrible childhood. I mean, from the perspective of a child, I'm thinking, if when Meshorn was 8 or 10, I mean, life was maybe dangerous. Life was insecure. I mean, it would be for a child trying to figure out life. So much of his growing up years were just tragic. But he survived, and, he is a blessed man. God, once again, my perspective on faith, God had a plan, a purpose. God protected him. Over the years has described himself as a descendant, an American descendant of slaves. And to which I'm saying, I understand that. I mean, I understand the words, understand the perspective, or at least I think I do. And it's just his larger perspective on who he is, and how he understands, describes how he, it is not the pigment in his skin, it's his heritage, it's his family. The expectation of the word black is in many ways not too flattering for black folks. So, that's both my perspective in many ways, but that's one of the things that I drew from Meshorn is in connecting the dots, I begin to understand and think I have an understanding on why American descendant of slaves is important to him and more descriptive than black. So then the Army experience came along, and after this childhood, I said, if Meshorn had not joined the Army, I don't know if the old boy would have lived. I don't know that he would have survived. I mean, the Army may have, in fact, I believe, saved him from what was going to be eventual destruction. So, and he would say that he's an American. He proudly served in the armed forces. Not a perfect country, but a circumstance that did good by him. What black means in American society, and particularly enlightening, insightful, I thought, was what black means to a lot of folks white folks or non-black folks, who would consider themselves sympathetic and supportive of black folks, but that their preconceived sort of expectation level is not at all beneficial to black folks. So it was a predominantly white town, but I never grew up in a house that my parents did not model to me discrimination and racism. We did not. I did not hear the N-word in my house, and so attitudinally, I don't have this expectation that a black guy is supposed to be, is supposed to not be educated or not be successful in something beyond basketball. I just said that's just not my perspective. So if you, in the big city, when I look at people within the community and their expectation, the box that they tend to want to put black folks in, it's really, even though they will say that they are really supportive and they really want to help and they really don't think of black folks different, the expectation and the box that they put them in is just the opposite of what they say and would tell you that they think. So because and I have a vision impairment. I don't see well at this point at all and walk with a white cane. So I don't see what your skin pigment is anymore.
Yeah, so what you were several times you've been saying there are people that they think they don't have to, they don't look, down on black, but yet they say that, but in actuality they do. Like, do you remember a story of a situation in your life, or?
So I've been in the insurance and investment business since 1974, almost 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have lots and lots of contact with lots and lots of people of all kinds of statuses, economically and politically and all that stuff. And so I will talk to a typical liberal, who I describe as liberal, guilty white man. And he will look at, and we will have a conversation about the black community in Louisville. And he will look upon the black community quite favorably and think quite favorable of the community. But if you have a really depth and serious conversation about what they think about black folks, you will find out that they think that that they're smarter than you and they're more successful than you, and you're not going to be those things. You're not going to, by training or by success, you're not going to get better or smarter or more successful than they are. There's a lot of Louisville political people, political leaders, religious leaders, particularly liberal religious leaders, that have that perspective, and it's more subtle than obvious. You look at someone and you say the sky's the limit, and let's coach this guy, let's coach this fella to where, let's just coach him to as far as we can get him. And let's don't ever say, well, okay, we're as far as he's going to go. Let's don't say that. It may be as far as he can go, but let's don't put a top. Let's don't put a lid on this guy's ability expectation. I guess good hearts, good meaning, perspective, folks within the community that have an expectation on other folks in the community that is they put a lid on the box. And I don't want a lid put on my box. I don't want a lid put on Meshorn's box. I don't want a lid put on your box.
Good. So who would you recommend this book to?
Yeah. Well, I have recommended his book to a number of people. So this guy looks at his experience as not in the stereotypical perspective of black folks. And so if you want to read this book, what you have to do is you have to be open to that idea. One of the things that just baffles me is we have been in Louisville for 44 years. We've been in Louisville for 44 years. I've seen, now a couple of generations of folks, leadership, whatever. And I do not see, broadly speaking, I do not see, there are too many people that in leadership, of all kinds of leadership, exploit the racial divides because they benefit from it. But, 40 years and we're not, to me, noticeably any different. Something's not right here. So I've recommended it to many people that have an interest in improving racial relationships in Louisville.